On the peaceful Maple Street, where red-tiled roofs nestled under towering oak trees, the Johnson family lived a simple yet happy life. They consisted of Tom, a reserved construction engineer, Sarah, a devoted teacher, and their 8-year-old daughter Emily, a kind-hearted little girl. One chilly afternoon, while the family was out shopping at a grocery store, Emily suddenly noticed a cardboard box abandoned by the roadside. Inside, a tiny caramel-furred kitten was trembling, its wide green eyes filled with fear. "We can't just leave it here, Mom and Dad," Emily pleaded, her eyes shining with urgency. Tom and Sarah exchanged glances, hesitant at first, but they couldn't bring themselves to abandon the helpless little creature. And so, Lucy, the name Emily chose for the kitten, officially became the newest member of the Johnson family. In the first few weeks, Lucy was extremely shy. She hid under the bed, only creeping out at night to nibble on a few pieces of food before retreating again. But Emily didn't give up. She patiently sat by the bed, gently talking to Lucy every day. As time passed, Lucy began to trust her, and her cautious steps gradually became bolder. Lucy was not only an intelligent cat, but also incredibly perceptive. She learned how to open doors, turn on light switches, and even drag Emily's backpack to the door every morning, as if reminding her to go to school on time. But the most remarkable thing about Lucy was her nurturing instinct, something not commonly seen in cats. The Johnson family first noticed this extraordinary trait when Emily brought home an injured baby bird. Lucy immediately took on the role of a guardian, never leaving the box where the little bird lay and even attempting to feed it. Thanks to Lucy, the bird gradually recovered and eventually spread its wings to fly away. Then, on a stormy night, a nest of baby squirrels fell into the yard. Despite the raging storm, Lucy bravely dashed outside, carefully carrying each tiny squirrel to the safety of the porch. The next morning, the mother squirrel returned to retrieve her babies, but the sight of Lucy curled up protectively around the fragile little creatures remained forever etched in the Johnson family's memory. Lucy gradually became a beloved symbol of the neighborhood, adored by everyone. But then, one day, the Johnsons noticed a change in her. She ate less, often sat by the window staring into the distance, her green eyes filled with an indescribable sadness. Worried, the family took Lucy to the vet, and the news they received left them stunned. Lucy was pregnant. Upon hearing the news, the Johnsons immediately began preparing. Emily was thrilled at the thought of taking care of the upcoming kittens. She and her mother lovingly crafted a warm nest using old blankets and soft pillows, while Tom bought special food for pregnant cats. The whole family eagerly awaited the day the tiny lives would enter the world. As time passed, Lucy became increasingly calm. She no longer moved as swiftly as before, preferring instead to curl up in her nest, occasionally letting out small, weary sighs. Still, she always showed affection for Emily, rubbing her head against the little girl's hand whenever she was petted. Then, the big day arrived. That night, as the summer breeze rustled through the tree branches outside the window, Lucy went into labor. She chose a quiet corner in the storage room to give birth. The Johnsons tried not to disturb her, only waiting silently outside, listening to her faint, strained meows. The next morning, Lucy emerged from the storage room, exhausted, but there were no kittens following behind her. A terrible feeling crept over Tom. Gently, he lifted the blanket inside the nest. His heart clenched. 3 tiny kittens lay motionless, showing no signs of life. The whole family was in shock. Sarah covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Emily sobbed, "Why did this happen, Mom?" Later, the vet confirmed that the kittens had been stillborn, an unfortunate but not uncommon occurrence for a cat's first litter. But what worried the Johnsons most wasn't the loss itself, it was Lucy's reaction. Lucy refused to leave the nest. She curled up beside her lifeless kittens, licking them and trying to warm them as if they were still alive. Even after the family gently removed the tiny bodies to help Lucy move on, she continued searching, lingering in the same corner, refusing to eat or drink. Emily tried playing with Lucy like before, but it was no use. Lucy no longer ran up to nuzzle her, no longer jumped onto the table mischievously, no longer followed the family around the house. In the days that followed, she simply sat by the window in silence, her green eyes staring emptily outside. The Johnsons' hearts ached as they watched Lucy sink into sorrow. Sarah and Tom tried everything, buying her new toys, offering her delicious treats, even seeking advice from the vet. But nothing could bring Lucy out of her grief. Until one day, something miraculous happened. That afternoon, while Emily was playing in the garden, she suddenly heard a faint whimper from beyond the fence. She ran closer and was stunned to see Lucy carrying a tiny creature in her mouth. A soaking wet, shivering black-furred puppy. Emily's mouth fell open as she shouted, "Mom, Dad, look at this!" Sarah and Tom rushed outside. The three of them stood frozen as Lucy gently placed the puppy on the grass, nudging it softly with her nose before beginning to lick it, just as she would have cared for her own kittens. Where did this puppy come from? Tom wondered aloud. Before they could process what was happening, Lucy turned around, leaped over the fence, and disappeared. Moments later she returned, this time with another puppy, slightly larger than the first. Sarah gasped, "Lucy is bringing puppies home?" And so, for an entire week, Lucy continued her rescue mission, bringing home a new puppy each day. In total, she had saved 5 tiny pups, all with jet black fur and big round eyes. At first, the Johnsons were bewildered. They posted notices all over the neighborhood, searching for the puppy's owner, but no one came forward. When the vet examined them, he discovered they were mildly malnourished, suggesting they had either been abandoned or not properly cared for by their mother. Lucy had done something extraordinary. She was no longer a grieving mother, lost in sorrow. She had become a devoted parent, without caring about species differences. And then, the most astonishing thing happened. Lucy began producing milk. Despite being a cat, her body had miraculously adapted to nurse her adopted puppies. She fed them, cleaned them, and cared for them as if they were her own. The vet was amazed. This was an incredibly rare occurrence in the animal world. Emily was moved to tears as she watched Lucy tenderly nuzzle each puppy, wrapping herself around them as if they were her real children. But soon, the news of Lucy and her puppies spread beyond the Johnson household. The neighbors began whispering. The story of Lucy and her puppies quickly spread throughout the neighborhood. At first, most people were simply amazed by the unusual event. A cat adopting puppies and even producing milk to nurse them? It sounded unbelievable. Children from the neighborhood eagerly flocked to Emily's house to catch a glimpse of Lucy and her little ones. Everyone giggled with delight as the puppies nestled against Lucy's belly to nurse or attempted to mimic feline habits, licking their paws to groom themselves or stretching gracefully like a cat. But not everyone found the story so heartwarming. Mrs. Parker, an elderly neighbor who lived across from the Johnsons, began to grow suspicious. One morning, as she watched Lucy leap over the fence once again, she frowned and turned to another neighbor. "That cat looks sneaky to me. What if it actually stole those puppies?" Her words quickly turned into a rumor. Before long, some people in the neighborhood started to wonder, had Lucy kidnapped the puppies from somewhere? If so, who did they really belong to? The pressure on the Johnson family grew by the day. Sarah no longer felt comfortable stepping outside, always aware of the judgmental stares directed at their house. Tom kept receiving unsolicited advice from neighbors, suggesting that they should hand the puppies over to an animal shelter. Then, one afternoon, everything reached a breaking point. A firm knock echoed through the house. When Tom opened the door, he found a police officer standing on the porch, accompanied by 2 neighbors, one of whom was Mrs. Parker. "Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson," the officer said. "We've received reports from several residents about a possible case of animal theft. I need to ask you some questions regarding the puppies in your home." Sarah held her breath. Emily clung tightly to her mother's hand. Tom took a deep breath, then stepped aside to let the officer in. In the living room, Lucy lay curled up in her basket, surrounded by 5 peacefully sleeping puppies. The officer observed the scene for a moment before turning back to Tom and asking, "Where did these puppies come from?" Tom and Sarah recounted the entire story, from how Lucy had brought each puppy home to their unsuccessful attempts at finding their owner. They also explained how Lucy had miraculously started producing milk and nurturing the puppies as her own. Emily, who had been silent until now, suddenly stepped forward. "I know where Lucy got the puppies," she said. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. "I've been watching Lucy every day," she continued, she always runs toward the abandoned house at the edge of town." The officer frowned. He exchanged a glance with Tom before saying, "We need to check that place out." Without hesitation, Tom and the officer headed out, leaving Sarah and Emily anxiously waiting at home. An hour later, they returned, their faces somber. "We found the puppy's mother," Tom said. In the abandoned house on the outskirts of town, they had discovered a frail, emaciated dog. Barely clinging to life, she had recently given birth, but her body was too weak to care for her puppies. Lucy, with her extraordinary instincts, had realized the danger. She had understood that if she didn't act, the puppies wouldn't survive. So she had carefully and silently carried each one home, ensuring their safety. The news spread quickly through the town. Those who had once doubted Lucy now felt ashamed for having judged too quickly. The officer determined there was no reason to intervene in how the Johnsons were caring for the puppies, but suggested that the mother dog be taken to the vet for treatment. Once the mother dog regained her strength, the Johnson family worried about how Lucy would react. Would she be willing to give back the puppies she had so lovingly cared for? But once again, Lucy surprised everyone. When the mother dog was brought to the Johnsons' home to reunite with her puppies, Lucy showed no signs of distress or possessiveness. She simply sat at a distance, her green eyes calm yet understanding. As the mother dog gently licked each of her babies, Lucy quietly stepped forward and nuzzled against her. An unspoken gesture of encouragement. In the following days, the mother dog gradually took over caring for her puppies. But Lucy remained nearby, watching over them like a silent guardian. The story of Lucy spread across social media and even made it into the local newspaper. The entire town didn't just grow fond of Lucy, they began to look at each other with more kindness. This event sparked a wave of compassion for animals throughout the community. More people started considering adoption from shelters instead of buying pets. Eventually, when the puppies were old enough, kind-hearted neighbors stepped forward to adopt them, while the mother dog found a loving home with a caring family. And Lucy? She remained the Johnsons' extraordinary cat. But something had changed. After everything, Lucy was no longer a cat mourning the loss of her own kittens. She had found a new purpose, becoming a great mother, one who loved without boundaries. And so the story of Lucy, the cat with a heart full of kindness, became a small but unforgettable legend in the hearts of everyone who heard it. Don't forget to like and subscribe.